Happy Sunday, church, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. As I was thinking of this week's sermon, and it being Mother's Day, most of us associate mothers with unconditional love. And when we think of unconditional love, as Christians, we should be thinking about the love of God. And our church should be a love like mothers. We've talked about justice in the past few weeks. But this week, let's talk about the church. One thing every pastor does is encourage its church, encourages its members for the things that they're doing, the things they do right. But also what pastors should be doing is talking about how Christians and the church have gotten it wrong. Gandhi said it best. I like your Christ, but not your Christianity. The point of the church is to be God's representation here on earth. So in that sense, we are all ambassadors of God. And all too often, while the church has done good things, it has done a bad job at times at representing God. Often I'm asked the question, why did I choose to go into ministry? And often I tell people God called me to ministry for damage control. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was at a church function, and there was a speaker talking, and they were engaged with the audience and asked, name words you associate with Christians. As I sat there in a room full of Christians, not a single positive word was spoken. Hateful, judgmental, hypocritical, unwelcoming, unloving were words that were spoken. And sadly, I have to agree that the church has earned that reputation. I've often said one of the biggest issues with Christianity today is Christians and how we are perceived. Though it might be a few that have given it a bad name, it is something we all have to deal with. We have to ask the question, who has been hurt by the church? I know I've been hurt by the church. I know many other people have been hurt by the church. And one of the main reasons our pews are empty and are getting smaller and smaller is because of hurt caused by the church. And it's because most Christians have lost the essence of God and have no shame for missing who God is, missing that unconditional love, like a mother. Today's scriptures are going to come from Hosea chapter 10, verses 12 and 13. So in Hosea 10, 12 and 13. Sow for yourselves righteousness, reap steadfast love. Break up your fallowed grounds, for it is time to seek the Lord, that he may come and rain righteousness upon you. You have plowed wickedness, you have reaped injustice, and have eaten the fruit of lies, because you have trusted in the power and in the multitudes of your warriors. Here we see what we should be growing, and what the nation of Israel had been growing. steadfast love. When we sow righteousness, we reap justice and love. Not just love, but a steadfast love. We reap unwavering love when we sow justice. We seeking these things. We seek God. But in order for the church to be the church, we must understand the essence of God, which is a steadfast love. Zephaniah 3, verse 5 says, "The Lord is righteous, the Lord does no wrong. Every morning God renders God's judgment, each dawn without fail, but the unjust know no shame." God brings justice each morning. Without fail, God's justice is new. But we learn here the unjust have no shame. And the church has become accustomed to knowing no shame. Think about the church, the history of the church for most of us. We all know evangelicals. Think back to Billy Graham, the Crusades, then televangelists and such. And the sad part is, evangelical has become a nasty word. Not something people like to be associated with anymore. And the saddest part about it is, at its roots, evangelicalism was about love, showing who God was to the world. And that's why it grew so much. But evangelists have traded in the cross to take a seat of judgment, which has given it a bad name. Jesus left us with 2 commands. And most people get upset when I bring up this point. A lot of Christians get mad when I bring up this point. Christians getting mad when you preach Christ. Go figure. But you can read it for yourself in Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 through 40. Matthew 22, starting in verse 37. He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first command. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commands hang all the law and the prophets." Love God. Love your neighbor. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands. John Lennon said it best. Imagine there's no religion. God is not a religion. Christianity is not a religion. It is supposed to be an experience of a relationship with the Spirit that created us and created everything. I'm not an outdoorsy person, per se, but if you go into creation, you will find God there. Everything works together. And that's how Christ expects the church to be. We all have talents. We all have gifts. We all have a role to play. We are ambassadors of God. We represent what God is supposed to be. And how can we do that if we are not standing up to the world and even standing up to the church. Standing up like a mother stands up for her child, as God stands up for us. We have to stand. When a gay boy is mocked, made in the image of God, and wants to kill himself, God has been rejected. When women are forced to make horrible decisions and persecuted for them, God has been rejected. When someone feels ashamed because they need food and can't afford it, and made to feel bad because of it, God has been rejected. When it's freezing outside or it's scorching outside, and we have people living on the streets, when we have empty buildings, God has been rejected. When men and women serve this country and come back and can't get jobs or mental health or physical health services, God has been rejected. When the great creation God has made for us to live in is literally on fire, God has been rejected. When God is rejected, God is not present to the world. And that fault lies in us. In order to be a change in the evils of this world, we have to get back to Mother God. Not a God that makes you feel guilty, or a God waiting to judge you. Not a God that is some extremist. We need to turn to a God who put everything back on loving God and loving each other. That is what everything hangs on. Jesus' words, not mine. And the church must hang on to love thy neighbor, no exception. A full, unconditional mother's love. Welcoming all, not a selected few. Without being the total love, like our mothers, like God, there will be no church in the future. Love trumps hate. Always. Today, may we feel the loving warmth of God. May we take it to a world that feels unloved. Amen.